Hello and welcome to the next in the series of the Idiot's Guide to F1 2020 modding. I'm going to talk about probably the thing that people want to mod most in-game, and that's helmet design. The reason I've left it until now is because it's a little bit more difficult to do, and there's a little bit more to be done in terms of design. It can be a little bit more fiddly, but I'll talk you through it as we go through. One thing I will be using, and I refer to it right back in the very first video, is the 3D imagery that I've got from Race Department. That I would highly recommend going and getting if you've not done so already as we go through. I'll also be talking about the Ego ERP Archiver, Photoshop, and various bits and pieces. If at this point you're thinking, what the hell is he on about? Please go and look at the first video where I go through exactly what is needed, what bits and pieces you need to do exactly what we are doing, just to save on repeating it again and again in different videos. So on with what we're here to do, which is helmet design. Now the helmets are, if we go and load the ERP archive, and we go all the way back to the main thing. So we're working from the main folder. We want asset groups, character package, team livery, and for this we are going to use the FOM 01. This is the 70th anniversary edition helmet that's in the game. And again, we've got 3 different game files. So this will be where we'll be doing all of our relevant bits and pieces. So we'll leave that there for a moment, and we are going to, in fact, we'll close that and we'll load it from source. So close that for a moment. We want to go to where I've saved my 3D modeling. So we're going to load the 3D model for last year's helmet design. However, it works in this game. It's exactly the same. So as we wait for it to load, so we can see here is the game design as it looks in Photoshop, a little bit different than as it looks in game. Now we've got a few bits and pieces going on here in terms of the layers. We can ignore the visor tear because that correlates to a tear strip that's on here that you can't see. It doesn't matter, you can't change it. You've also got the visor, which determines the base layer of the visor. Again, you can't really change that. But what we are interested in is the helmet wing, and the visor attachments. So we are going to open one of each. Go back to the helmet, we're going to open the helmet wing, and go back to the visor attachments, and there's the main parts. So these correlate to each of the individual parts. So the wing is this part, the visor attachment is this part, and the main helmet is everything else you can see. So we're going to start with the helmet wing first, and this comes with UV overlays to show you where the redundancies that I've talked about before, the areas that don't really matter in the image, start and stop. So here is your shape of your wing. Everything inside these lines is governed on that wing. So for example, if we get out the magic white line again, if I put a white chunk there and color it in somewhat, if we go back to our main helmet design, we will see that that appears right there. You'll see that the alignment is somewhat out as well. So where the slingshot fuel is slightly canted upwards, but you'll see how the alignment changes in terms of the wing, because that is nowhere near the right angle. So that's just something you'll have to just tinker and play with. This little area here, so if we were to color it in very roughly, and then go back to our helmet design, you can see now that under there, so underneath all of this, is now a different color. It's not really something you need to do in game because it's very difficult to see in there, but if you wanted to, you can color the inside and the outside of the helmets different, the wing different colors. So that's the wing. So that's an easy part to deal with. We've then got the visor. Now you'll notice here there's a few bits and pieces going on, bits and pieces that I've not really done on anywhere else. So I've got a race number here, I've got Instagram stuff, and I've got Steam Workshop stuff. These are simply imagery that I've taken from online, and paste it into here. You can do that. You can do that with real world sponsors if you want. You can do it for whatever immersion. For example, I've got Instagram stuff and Steam stuff just because it's personal to me. You cannot use any of these designs outside of single player content. You can't use them in unranked. You can't use them online because of the way the game mods it. So literally anything you put on here isn't for any purpose. It's just for whatever immersion you want. But here's where it goes. And the same again, it goes within these little areas. Now this little part, I haven't quite figured out what this little part is, but we'll color it in white, see if it changes anything. I don't think it will. No, it doesn't. It relates to a part that's hidden from view, probably a little vent that's behind there. But the rest of it, so we've got our lines. You'll see where we've got our lines down the middle. We'll use those as a reference. They are down the middle of the visor. So that is purely circled around the front of the helmet. So this is really easy to design because any of the lettering you just put completely upright and it will just stretch around itself. It doesn't ruin the aspect angle. It doesn't curve it or arch it in any way. So it's really easy to try and put bits and pieces on there and really personalize. Now we come on to the more difficult bit, the helmet itself. So let's get rid of the overlays. Here, and we'll go to the top layer so that I can draw on it. So here we've got a lot going on. So this area, so we'll start here. So these areas here, complete with these colored lines, are, spin the helmet around, they correlate to the very rear of the helmet. Now obviously I've used two colors, so you can see on, in fact let's close these to avoid any confusion. So you can see where this ends right at the end. So this part here, right on the outside, and here is where your helmet overlaps. It wraps all the way around the back. Now, I'll put the overlays back on for this. This point here, and down and around here. So this is your center point of your helmet and your vents. And then all the way underneath is the chin area of the helmet. Anywhere this yellow line, anywhere above this yellow line is somewhere that's governed on this helmet. So for example, we go back to the helmet design again, and you can now see that where I've drawn that line, there's a little white line all the way around here. So that is this area here. Now the helmet design itself curves up this way. So to try and design things, it can be very, very, very confusing, because if we put writing in here, so if I put, for example, hi and a smiley face, if we then go to the helmet, you can see that that's not how that appears, because the helmet stretches, the ratios in the helmet are different. But you'll also notice that where my pattern is pretty much pointing the same way as this, but it has changed quite a lot. Now we take the UV overlays off again. You'll notice that when I imported this, I had to tinker a little bit with the pattern, and I've had to squash it in. I've had to change its aspect ratio, and that's purely because when it appears on the helmet, it's a lot wider than it actually appears on here because of the way it compresses. That's just a word to the wise in terms of putting things, complex things around the front of the helmet. The same can be true a little bit for the top of the helmet. So you'll notice here and here, if we go back to the helmet and we tilt it, so you'll notice that my lines stop here, but there's more of the helmet here. And actually there's more of the helmet behind here. There's a whole section here that is not governed in this area. So if you imagine that this area here is the top front of your helmet, so you'll see where I've got the writing there, and this area curves over to meet it along with this area, almost like a big origami. So the same occurs again. So if I were to put in another smiley face, and we go to the helmet again, you see how despite the fact that the helmet, the smiley face is pretty much in the same aspect ratio, that's not how it appears on the helmet. So if you put writing here, it will stretch quite far. So you have to scale the writing and it can be quite difficult to do. So that's why I've kept quite a lot of writing out of everything bar this center area. Now you've also got a few other bits and pieces on this helmet. You've got this area that I've drawn all over already, and these two areas here. Now they govern bits and pieces on the helmet that are add-ons. You've also got this area here, and that area, ignoring the lazy bits where I haven't laid over, that governs the pattern on the inside of your helmet. So if we go back to the helmet for one last time, so the grey areas and the black areas govern things like these, the grey parts, and these, and this. They also govern the chin strap here, and they also govern the pattern around here as well, where you can see where I've drawn all over it. So that pattern is this pattern here. So that's the helmet parts. Once you understand that, because it took me quite a while to get my head around it and try and interpret this model onto the helmet, if you remember those key parts as to what does what, then it helps you to try and work out, and it makes it a little bit less trial and error when you're designing. But what is helpful, as you've seen here, so turn it back round. So here we've got everything we need, and as I alter it, it will change in real time. Now if you are using Photoshop, sometimes it doesn't. You simply just go to whichever layer you want. So for example, we'd made changes to the visor. We'd click off the visor, the little eye symbol, and in fact not the visor, the visor attachment, and it would go white. Click it back on and it will come up, it will reload the texture that you've adjusted, just in case, because sometimes it can just sit there and you think, well, nothing's changing. But it will update for the most part in real time, which is really, really helpful. Now, the one thing I haven't talked about yet, and let's go into my helmet parts folder, is we've got psychedelic version here, we've got visor version, and we've got two. In fact, we've got visor and we've got a wing. So these are the Sierra files for the helmet, and they dictate the finish to the paintwork. So for example, and let's open this. So all I've done is from this pattern, take off the UV overlays again, I've literally just highlighted everything in this pattern, which copies it to clipboard at the same size. I then copy from clipboard into Photoshop and copy it in, because it's really important to have the same size image. And I'll explain why in a second when we load all this up. But that will give me the actual same image. Then all we do is we color code each individual part. So everywhere where you can see which is a pinky purple, that is chrome. So for example, if this were white on top, actually that helmet would be silver. So if you imagine the skins for Mercedes, for example, they are an off-white color until you apply this, or the old skins, not the new 2020 livery. That's why it's really important. And if you remember this area is black, I'll show you the difference that makes when we go into game in a moment. The orange areas are a matte finish. So you'll notice that I've left areas blank because I actually want areas of this helmet to stand out from the rest of it. And I've kept it fairly straightforward because this is kind of a first tinker with it. You can go more complex to this if you want. But again, if you, for example, if you borrow a helmet or if you load a helmet from one of the other drives in game, or if you load a helmet from a custom setup for race department, it will look something similar. Now, in terms of, we can close that now, go back to my helmet parts. So in terms of these, I've kept them orange. I've kept it simple because I want that entire section to be matte black. So if you want to, you could color them pink. Pink being, again, as I said, chrome. Green, which is a standard gloss finish. You can color it that color as well, and it will change the way it looks. So if we go back to, let's close all of this. If we go back to the archiver, so if you remember where we were in the asset groups character package team livery FOM. we're going to go into the FOM livery. And what we're going to do, we then need to find the FOM helmet delta file, load your design. Your helmet Sierra file, load your patterning. Same for your wing design, and same for your visor attachments. Once you've done that, you're going to save it, and then you're going to open the gloves. Now, if you remember what I said last time, even though it's called gloves, helmet, FOM, that's not what it actually does. One is responsible for how the items look in menus and in just in the control of the game. One dictates how you look in a race, and one dictates how you look in cutscenes and things like that. So you have to do exactly the same to one as you do the other. If you don't, the game will still load, but it will not work properly. You'll have things like rendering issues. You will have, I've had it before where a file didn't take when I loaded it, and I did a historic challenge, and once I finished the historic challenge, the AI forgot, well, the game forgot to end the challenge, and the AI spent 3 laps driving around Spa. So it can do some pretty weird things to the game. So the same again, we load into the gloves ERP. We load in the helmet delta and Sierra, the helmet wing delta and Sierra, and the visor attachments delta and Sierra. And same again, we save it. We open the third, and we do exact the same. So helmet delta Sierra, wing delta Sierra, visor attachments delta Sierra, and we save it. Save. And we get rid of that. So let's flick over to the game. So here I am with the helmet in the game. And as I said, the different colors here, so it looks a bit weird in the menus, but I'll do a video where I show what it looks like in game, because it is a little bit different finish. But you can see the difference between the Sierra files. So if you remember, this is dark jet black, and so is the top of the helmet. You see the difference in coloring now with the different colors in the Sierra file. You see how the AMG appears in white on the file, on my file, but actually it's silver here, and that's the difference it can make in terms of colors. So you can have a little bit of a tinker around. You can't really see it in the menu, but here these are actually chromed in the engine. You can see whereas they're a matte color in the editing, you can see where the light hits them, and again, it's just the way that the light works in the menus. So we're going to go into selecting this. Now you'll see all the relevant different helmets, and you'll see the 70s edition helmet here. We've just told it it's our helmet. It's completely different. That's how you then select it. You then just literally equip it as any other helmet. And that is as straightforward and as simple as that. So that is how you make your own helmet design. It's also how, if you download a custom helmet design from somewhere like Racedept or somewhere else, that's how you load it in. You can also find in the game files, so again in the team liveries or in the drivers within that same folder, within the assets folder, you can find current driver helmets, and you can take those. So if you want to base it on one, or if you want to role play and move another driver into a different team, into, for example, the driver career, that is how you do it. So I'm going to end the video there. On the screen will be a link to my YouTube channel. Please give it a click. You'll also see a link to the Idiot's Guide playlist, and also the very first video in the series. Again, I'm only doing this because it took me a good couple of days to try and get my head around it, and I'm pretty computer savvy, and all the guides I've found out there so far don't really go into the intricate detail as to how to do bits and pieces. Some of the stuff that can be quite key and almost game breaking at times. The last video I'll do in terms of the guide will be the one that everyone really wants to do, which is the custom livery, which I'll show you how to design the livery that you can see on the car that's on the screen at the minute. For now, I will bid you farewell, and until the next